Good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, the 26th of April. I continue with my little exploration of the book of Exodus today, my first day back in the office, and we pick up Exodus 15, reading from verses 13 through to the end. And we notice how the crossing of the Red Sea has already taken place. So that you would have picked up in your readings over the weekend. And the build-up to that, for me, is also significant. So I want to just go back and recap. After I had spoken last week, when was it? Friday. And we were talking about the liturgical formula of worship that God had asked Moses to record and for the people to adhere to, and saying that, in effect, liturgical worship is not a bad thing. It actually comes from God. And so to throw out any form of liturgy is literally perhaps to throw out a significant part and an important part of our worship for God. Obviously, throwing it all out, and also the opposite extreme of having in all of our worship being entirely liturgical may be extremes on both sides. Either way, over the weekend, the reading continued with the people leaving Egypt and starting their journey. It doesn't all happen within a few hours. It takes place over a couple of days. And so they spend nights camping at various places. And what's fascinating is that God is very aware and has spoken clearly to Moses. Don't take the immediate direct route. Don't go down the national highway. That's where the people will expect you to go, and they will catch you quickly. So he led them on the back roads, and he would lead them in a particular direction, and then he would suddenly reverse the direction, go back somewhere else. And he had said to Moses, this is because I want to let Pharaoh think that you are confused and that you are now trapped between the Egyptians and their army on the one side and the desert and even the Red Sea on the other. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will send the army to capture you, and there will be a big battle. Well, that's what Pharaoh will think. And so that's precisely what happens. The people seem to meander a little, still within the boundaries of Egypt. And this is all part of a ploy and a plan by God. And then when the Egyptian army begins to mobilize, God leads the people right up to the shore of the Red Sea. And it's there when I'm assuming they kind of arrive sometime after lunch in the afternoon, and they're not too sure quite what's going to happen, but there's no sign of the Egyptians, so they're reasonably happy. And then all of a sudden, on the horizon, the dust clouds form, and there comes the Egyptian army. And the people go from being incredibly happy and excited and worshiping God, everything's going well for them, and suddenly they begin to pick and turn on Moses and say, why have you brought us here? It's to let us die in the desert, where there are not enough graves in Egypt for us to rather die there. We want to go back to Egypt. And it struck me that, that this is often how we as humans operate. When things are going well, we're all very happy, and we all want to worship God and go to church. But when things become a little tough for whatever reason, then, oh no, all of a sudden God's not good enough, the church is not good enough, the rector is just bad and atrocious, and the lay ministers and the readers and whatever else. And we seem to vacillate and oscillate between these two extremes, almost as if, we have some kind of a problem. There's no sense of faithfulness and sticking with God through the thick times and through the good times. So anyway, the people are complaining. But this is all part of God's plan. And the other learning is that God is always with us. He is never silent. He is talking. God has a plan. Quite why God leaves the plan to the last minute, I don't know. But what I can learn is this. What happens is that they are trapped now between the Egyptian army and the Red Sea. They're not too sure how they're going to cross this body of water. And the pillar of fire and the cloud that has been accompanying them, this visible sign of the presence of God, goes back at dusk, and it stands between the people of Israel, who are now fleeing, the former slaves going to their promised land, and the Egyptian army. And so there's a sense in which the cloud covers the Egyptian army, the darkness is thick and palpable, and it comes down early. The pillar of fire is on the other side of the cloud. It's providing light to the Israelites. And God is talking to Moses and telling him what's going to happen. He says, go to the riverbank and hold your staff out over the waters. And that's precisely what Moses does. And at some point during the night, the wind has blown, it's moved the waters aside, and they are able to walk through on dry land. The water piled up on either side. Hollywood shows it as sort of, multiple meters towering over the tallest warriors of Israel. It might not have been quite as tall as that. Either way, it was an impassable place to walk through. Now God has made it quite passable. The land is dry. And so the people cross through, and we are told in the last watch of the night, so just as dawn is beginning to break, the Israelites pretty much have crossed over, and the pillar of cloud moves away. The Egyptians see what has happened, and they gather their forces, and they go charging into this narrow lane of dry land with the water piled up on either side. However that looked, I would love to have seen it. And then God throws them into confusion. Their wheels begin to stick in the mud, so it's not quite as dry as they had thought it was, and God's letting the water begin to seep through. The wheels of the chariots fall off, and there's just general chaos, rush hour traffic, and then the waters flow back, and the Egyptian army is killed. And the Israelites see this, and that for me is another significant part, is that sometimes perhaps the delay that God brings about in our salvation is so that we can actually see the salvation at work. So I need to go because it's been a long talk. So God is never absent. He's always with us. He's never silent. He's always talking and leading us. And God works according to his own timetable, and he can make us go in one direction and then change to the other, perhaps to sow confusion in the hearts of those that are against us. And then he lets us see his glory. And today's lesson is the people singing this wonderful song to God and glorifying him. I mean, just literally the day before, hours before, they were blaming Moses rather, and blaming God for everything that he had led them to. Now they're praising God. There they flip over to the other side of their emotions. So let us remain faithful to God, no matter how troubling the world may be. Folks, we'll chat again on Thursday, as tomorrow's a public holiday, so I'll give you a break from my little talks. We'll chat again on Thursday. God bless.